I'm 58. I work in finance, the boring kind, retirement plans, rollover paperwork, people trying to make their money last longer than their knees. I'm not easily rattled. That's what I tell myself, anyway. 2 months ago, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen since the early 90s. Same area code, same weird local exchange. My first thought was that my contacts had glitched. The caller ID said, Eddie K. Eddie Kline was my best friend in high school. He died in 1995. Car wrapped around a telephone pole on a wet road. I went to the funeral. I helped his mother carry boxes to her car. I remember the smell of wet wool and carnations. I almost let it go to voicemail out of principle. But my thumb moved before my brain did. Hello. A breath on the other end. A familiar swallow, like someone preparing to speak carefully. Then, it's me. My mouth went dry so fast my tongue felt like paper. Who is this? Don't hang up, he said. I need you to move the money. I stood in my kitchen staring at the salt shaker like it had answers. My wife, Marlene, was upstairs on a work call. The dishwasher hummed. Everything normal except my pulse in my ears. Eddie, I finally asked, and the word tasted stupid. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said, You still keep things clean, right? You always did. It sounded like him in the same way an old song sounds like the year you first heard it. But also off. Older, obviously. A little rasp. Still, the cadence hit places in my memory I didn't know were still tender. What money? I said, keeping my voice level because that's what I do. Control is a habit. The account, he replied. The one we did for Ray. My stomach dropped. Ray was my dad. Eddie and I had done a little project for him in 1993, setting up a small side account for cash from my dad's construction jobs. Nothing sinister in our teenage heads. Help Dad with taxes, I told myself. That account doesn't exist, I said automatically. He laughed once, short. That's what you want to believe. Then he added, almost gently, They're closing in. I need you to wire it. Today. After I hung up, because my hands started shaking and I didn't trust my voice, I pulled out the old lockbox from the closet. The one with deeds, birth certificates, the boring paper spine of a life. I found a file labeled Ray Miscellaneous. My dad had been gone 10 years. Marlene had insisted we keep everything, just in case. There it was, a bank statement from 1994, creased like it had been handled too much. Not in my dad's name, not in mine. In the name of a company that never existed on paper, Kline and Mercer Holdings. Eddie and me. Balance back then, $18,421. 27. I remember thinking we were kings. My chest felt tight in a way that didn't match the numbers. I logged into the bank site with credentials I didn't remember setting. I tried the security questions like a safecracker. My first car, my mother's maiden name. It worked. There was still an account. Different bank now, migrated and rebranded twice over 30 years. The balance made my eyes refocus like I'd been hit. $412,883. 16. I sat down hard at the kitchen table. The chair legs squealed. That money hadn't come from teenage cash envelopes. Not like that. In the transaction history, I saw regular deposits for years labeled distribution. I saw one line that made my throat close. Policy benefit, 1995. I didn't tell Marlene. I told myself I was being prudent. Verify first. Don't panic. Don't accuse. I called the bank's fraud department from my office the next day. Voice smooth. Professional. I asked about the policy benefit entry. The rep put me on hold, then came back with that careful tone people use when the computer says things they don't want to say out loud. It appears a life insurance payout was deposited into the account in 1995, she said. Whose policy? I asked. I can only see the originating entity and partial details. It was tied to a claim on Edward Kline. My fingers went numb around my pen. Eddie had been uninsured, I remembered. His mom had done bake sales for the funeral. That memory had always been a fixed point. Something solid. I asked for copies. She said I'd need to submit an authorization form. She emailed it. When I filled it out, my name auto-populated as an authorized signer. I stared at the screen, at my own typed name, like it belonged to someone else. That night, Marlene asked why I was quiet. I said, "Work stuff." She touched my shoulder. I flinched and I hated myself for it. In bed, I lay awake hearing Eddie's voice say, "They're closing in," and wondered who they were, and why he thought I still belonged in whatever this was. The documents came in a secure message 2 days later. I opened them in my office with the door closed, blinds half drawn, like I was doing something obscene. There was a claim form from 1995. Beneficiary, Kline and Mercer Holdings. Signature, Edward Kline. My signature, 2, under witness. The signatures looked right in the way old handwriting looks right, loose, youthful. But my hand in 1995 had a little hook on the M. This one didn't. My chest got hot. Attached was a payout summary, $250,000. A lot back then. Enough to buy a modest house outright in my hometown. My mind did that accountant thing where it builds columns automatically. If $250,000 went in then, and it grew and there were steady distributions, someone had been feeding it, or laundering through it, or both. I called my mom. She's 81 and still sharp. I asked if my dad ever mentioned insurance policies, Eddie's family, anything. She went quiet, long enough that I could hear her refrigerator hum through the phone. "Your father handled things," she said finally. "He didn't like questions." "Did he have a policy on Eddie?" I asked, hating the words. "I don't know," she replied, but it didn't sound like not knowing. It sounded like refusing. After we hung up, I stared at the wall and realized something I should have realized earlier. Eddie's death hadn't just hurt. It had been worth money. Eddie called again the following week. Same number, same name on the screen. I answered because I needed to stop feeling like prey. "Where are you?" I asked. A pause. "Does it matter?" "It matters if you're alive," I snapped, then softened my voice because anger feels like losing. "Eddie, I was at your funeral." "I know," he said quietly. "You did what you were supposed to." The way he said it made my scalp prickle, like my grief had been part of a plan. "You're not Eddie," I said. "You're a scammer." He sighed. "I'm not asking you to believe in ghosts. I'm asking you to look at the account and do what you already know you need to do." "How do you know about Ray?" I demanded. "I was there," he said, "when your dad said, 'If anything happens, you boys will be set.'" My throat tightened. That sentence, my dad's voice, was something I'd heard once in his truck. The smell of cigarette smoke and sawdust. I'd never repeated it. Eddie, whoever he was, continued, "They're reviewing old claims. If they freeze it, you lose everything in there." "I lose everything. Move it into the trust like we planned." "What trust?" I asked, but I already had a sick idea. "The one your wife set up," he said. "Don't pretend you don't know." That night, while Marlene showered, I opened our shared laptop. I didn't feel proud. I felt cold. I searched trust in our email. A folder popped up titled Mercer Family Trust, 2021. I clicked. There were scanned documents, correspondence with an attorney I didn't recognize, and something labeled Asset Intake. Under Assets, K&M Holdings account, approximate $390K. I sat there, the laptop balanced on my knees, my heart thumping like it wanted out. Marlene came downstairs with wet hair, wrapped in an old college sweatshirt. She saw my face and stopped mid-step. "What is that?" she asked. I kept my voice steady because if I let it crack, I'd lose the thin thread of control. "Why is there a trust one don't know about?" Her eyes flicked to the screen, a tiny tightening at the corner of her mouth. "Not surprise. Recognition. It's just estate planning," she said. "We talked about it." "We did not," I replied. She walked closer, barefoot, leaving small damp prints on the hardwood. "I did it because you wouldn't. You kept saying you'd handle it, and you never did." "For an account I didn't know still existed?" She hesitated. Just a beat. And in that beat, my denial cracked. "You knew," I said. Her shoulders lifted in a small defensive shrug. I found it years ago. You had old statements in that lockbox. I was organizing. You moved it without telling me, I said, and my voice finally rose. I protected us. She shot back, too quickly. You don't understand what's at stake. The first twist was realizing the money wasn't a forgotten relic. It had been quietly orbiting our marriage like a second moon, affecting tides I'd blamed on other things. Marlene sat at the table and explained in her calm, project manager voice that she'd noticed the account in 2018. She'd called the bank. They treated her like she belonged there because, apparently, someone had already added her as a contact. Who added you? I asked. She swallowed. The attorney said it might have been you, or your father. My hands shook. I hid them under the table. She went on. I moved it into the trust because we're getting older, because your mom will need care, because you kept funneling money to your brother every time he had a shortfall. That's not... I started, but it was true. And, she added, eyes shiny but stubborn, because I saw those deposits marked distribution, and I got scared it was some kind of fraud. I wanted it shielded. So you hid it, I said. I didn't touch it, she insisted. I didn't spend it. I just positioned it. That should have been a relief. It almost was. Then she said, quieter. The attorney warned me that if anyone ever challenged the origin, they'd come after everything tied to it, including us. I thought about Eddie's words. They're reviewing old claims. My stomach turned. Who is they? Marlene looked down. Insurance investigators. The state. I don't know. I heard the shower drip in the quiet. One drop, then another like a metronome counting down. A week later, I got certified mail. The envelope was stiff, official. My name, typed cleanly. I felt my throat tighten before I even opened it, like my body recognized danger faster than my mind. It was a notice from an insurance carrier's special investigations unit. They were reassessing historical claims connected to a ring of fraudulent deaths in the mid-90s. Eddie's claim number was listed. So was the beneficiary, Kline and Mercer Holdings. They requested an interview. They also requested financial records dating back 30 years. I sat at my desk and watched my hands sweat onto the paper. Marlene's face when she said, "Positioned it," flashed in my mind. My mom's refusal. My dad's handled things. I called the number on the letter. A man answered, polite, steady. He said they'd uncovered multiple claims where beneficiaries were shell entities created by friends or business partners. Was Mr. Kline actually deceased? I asked, forcing the words out. We're not prepared to confirm details, he said. But there are discrepancies. After I hung up, my first instinct was to lawyer up. My second instinct was to move the money like Eddie demanded. That's the shameful part. For a moment, I considered it. Not because I wanted to help Eddie, but because I wanted the money to stay ours. I walked to the restroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and saw a man with gray at his temples and fear in his eyes. I whispered, "What did you do?" Like I was talking to a stranger. Eddie called again that night. I was alone in my car in a grocery store parking lot. Engine off, radio silent. The world outside was normal. People loading bags, a cart rattling. While my life felt like it was tilting off its foundation. I got a letter, I said. I told you, he replied. No sympathy, just impatience. Move it. You're alive, I said. Aren't you? A long exhale. Then, I'm here. My mouth tasted metallic. Why? Because Ray promised, he said. Because I did my part. What part? You think that crash was an accident? He asked, and my stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. He didn't let me answer. It wasn't supposed to go like that. I was supposed to disappear, not end up on a slab. You said you're here, I whispered. I'm here enough, he snapped. Listen, your dad took a policy out on me. He said it was key man coverage for the business. I was 18, I didn't understand. When it paid, he spread it around. He kept his cut. He put some in that account for you. For me? Because you were his good son, Eddie said, bitterness like old rust. And I was disposable. I gripped the steering wheel until my fingers ached. So you faked your death. Silence, then. I tried. That was the second twist. Eddie might not be dead, but the death I mourned had still been used to mint money. The false resolution came dressed as rationality. I told myself, okay, this is extortion. Someone found old records, got my childhood friend's voice from somewhere, and is pushing buttons. I went to the police with the call logs and the letter. I felt ridiculous sitting in a fluorescent-lit station explaining that a dead man was calling me about a 1995 insurance claim. The detective didn't laugh, but his eyes had that tired look people get when they file things they know won't move. He said they'd trace the number. He told me not to send money. At home, Marlene and I agreed on a script. Full cooperation, attorney present, disclose everything we knew, which wasn't much. For a week, I started to breathe again. I even slept one full night, the first in a month. I caught myself thinking, maybe this will end with paperwork and embarrassment. Nothing more. Then the detective called back. The number, he said, is registered to a prepaid account purchased with cash. But the tower pings? It's not local. Where? He hesitated. Mexico. Near the border. That doesn't mean anything definitive. But my skin went cold. That night, Marlene poured 2 glasses of wine. Her hands trembled slightly, and that tiny tremor scared me more than shouting would have. We're okay, she said. I wanted to believe her. I wanted the neat ending where the villain is a stranger and the money can be quarantined. But then she asked, softly, did your father ever have you sign anything when you were young? I stared at her, and in my mind, a memory shifted. My dad at the kitchen table in 1994, sliding papers toward me, saying, just sign. It's for the business. The third twist was realizing I might have been part of it, even if I didn't understand. I dug through boxes in the basement until my knees ached. Old tax returns, my first mortgage documents, the detritus of adulthood. I found a folder marked Insurance Old. Inside, copies of a key person policy, dated 1994, insured Edward Kline, owner Ray Mercer Construction. There was also an amendment, dated 1995, transferring ownership of the policy to Kline and Mercer Holdings. Signature, Ray Mercer, and mine, under authorized representative. My signature, real this time, the hook on the M. I sat on the basement floor holding that paper with both hands like it might bite me. My breathing went shallow. I remembered signing things because my dad told me to. I remembered feeling proud he trusted me. I remembered Eddie rolling his eyes, joking that my dad treated me like an apprentice. I didn't remember understanding any of it. But the law doesn't care what you remember understanding. Upstairs, Marlene found me sitting on the steps. I handed her the document. She read it and pressed her lips together so tight they went pale. So you did know, she whispered. I didn't, I said, and I hated how weak it sounded. Not like this. She sat beside me, shoulder to shoulder, and for a moment we looked like a couple weathering something together. Then she said, almost to herself, we should have spent it. I stared at her. What? Her eyes flicked away. Nothing. But the way she said it lodged under my ribs like a splinter. The fourth twist came when I learned Marlene hadn't just positioned the money. She'd leveraged it. Our attorney, new, expensive, brisk, asked for full disclosure. Marlene forwarded more documents. I watched her scroll too fast, like a magician controlling what the audience sees. I reached over and took the mouse. She didn't stop me. That was its own confession. There were loan agreements tied to the trust. 2 of them. One for $120,000 in 2022. Another for $80,000 in 2023. Collateral, trust-held liquid assets. That account. My ears rang. What did you do? Her face flushed. It was temporary. For what? She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, your brother. I barked a humorless laugh. My brother. He was going to lose the house, she said. eyes bright with anger now. You would have drained our retirement again. I did it in a way that didn't show up on your spreadsheets. Did he pay it back? She hesitated. My stomach turned. Marlene. No, she admitted. Not yet. So the money, dirty, disputed, dangerous money, had been used to prop up my family. And she'd hidden it from me like you hide a bottle from an alcoholic. I wanted to rage. Instead, I felt something worse. Relief mixed with guilt. Relief that I hadn't been the only one keeping secrets. Guilt because some part of me understood exactly why she did it. That night, I sat in the dark living room and thought about the kind of man who builds a life on money he doesn't want to ask questions about. The interview with the insurance investigators happened in a bland conference room with a carafe of bad coffee. They were polite, precise. They had stacks of documents already labeled. They asked about Eddie, about my dad, about the key person policy, about the shell company, about deposits marked distribution. Then one of them slid a photo across the table. Grainy, printed. A man in a baseball cap, older, heavier, but with eyes I recognized like a bruise you keep touching. He has used the name Edward Kline, the investigator said. We believe he's alive. My throat tightened. Where is he? We don't know, she replied. But we know he's made contact with you. We'd like cooperation in locating him. I looked at the photo until it blurred. 30 years of grief rearranged itself into something uglier. I hadn't been mourning a dead friend. I'd been mourning a story someone sold me. After the interview, our attorney pulled me aside. They're going to pursue recovery, he said. And because your signature is on the transfer, you may be civilly liable. Possibly criminal exposure depending on intent. Intent. At home, Marlene and I sat at the kitchen table and didn't touch. She said, "We can sell the house if we have to." I nodded, too numb to fight. Then, like a cruel punchline, my brother called asking if we could help a little with property taxes. I told him no. It was the first time I'd ever said no. My voice shook. After I hung up, I cried in the pantry where Marlene wouldn't see. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork, liens, letters, frozen accounts. The trust loan defaulted when the collateral got locked, and the lender came after us like a dog that finally caught the scent. Marlene moved into the guest room, not because we shouted, but because we stopped pretending. The quiet between us became a third person living in the house. The insurance carrier filed suit. The state got involved. Our attorney started using phrases like mitigation and negotiated repayment. My retirement projections turned into a joke with no punchline. Eddie called one last time. I answered because some part of me needed to hear it end. You should have moved it, he said. His voice sounded tired now, less sharp. You should have stayed dead, I replied, and surprised myself with how flat it came out. He was quiet, then said, Ray always knew you'd choose the safe way. And then the line went dead. Now I wake up early out of habit, make coffee I can barely afford, and check the mail like it's a medical test result. What lingers isn't the money, exactly. It's this. I keep replaying that memory of my dad sliding papers across the table, my teenage hands signing because I wanted to be trusted. I used to remember the smell of carnations at Eddie's funeral. Lately, what I remember most is the squeak of my pen on paper, and how proud I felt when my name looked official.